Good evening and welcome to Man's Model Moments. So tonight, hopefully I look slightly healthier. And mainly because I've got a backlight now. So I think my girlfriend's having some issues with the dog downstairs, if you can hear that. So yes, a little more natural. Somebody was talking about the webcam in one of my videos, saying how it wasn't 1080p and blah blah blah. It's not actually that at all. It's to do with the lighting in here, and because I'm having a lot of light here, it couldn't quite work out where the white balance should be, and yeah, as you can probably tell from creases in my forehead, this is 1080p. But anyway, hopefully that gives you a bit more clarity on tonight. So let's just have a quick look in the comments. Good evening, Chris. Good evening, Nunu, David, Adrian. Who else do we have? Phil, Gremlins Modeling Mayhem. Oh, that sounds interesting. Gary, David. Who else do we have here? Mark. And a few more, obviously. I got 18 in at the moment. Hobby Time, hello. No need to comment if you don't want to. If you just want to be a bystander or voyeur, that's absolutely fine. But tonight, I didn't entitle it the F15 part. What have we got now? 5, I think? 4 or 5? Because I won't be actually doing... Well, I will be doing work on the F15, but I also wanted to show you a few other things, including the short skipper. Didn't want you to think I'd forgotten about that. And so, yeah, it was kind of bits and bobs and projects, and because I want to talk about a few other things. So let me start off with one of those that I had a really nice lady come into the shop yesterday, whose father had died over a year ago, and they'd sold the house. They actually had a full, well, they had an offer on the anniversary of his death, exactly to the day. And so she thought, well, that's kind of a sign to actually kind of move on, sell the house, get all of that. And she hadn't really looked at a lot of stuff, and obviously he was a modeler, and she had a bunch of stuff. He didn't have a huge stash or anything, just a few kits. She had sold a few previously, but a few things that had been opened, and a few kits that hadn't. A few bits and bobs, paints and things she brought in, and said, I'm just going to throw this out. If you'd like it, or if anybody can use it, then I'd like to donate it, kind of thing. Which was really kind, really nice. We had a good chat about all sorts of things, not just modeling. But one of the things that she brought in, I thought would be quite interesting to show you guys, and that is this. So this is the Airfix Rally Car Collection in 1/43 scale. But I think, and in terms of selling this in the shop, it's kind of been opened and stuff. I'm not really sure if everything's here. It's kind of taped up, but I do check stuff in the shop to see if it is complete. You can never tell 100%. But I also thought this is quite an interesting collection. It obviously comes from the days when Humbrol, or the company that owned Humbrol, which wasn't Hella. A lot of people think it's Hella, but they also owned Hella. It's not actually the same. But it's from that time, and you can see there's pots of paints, which if I open those and those are actually usable, I'll be absolutely astonished. But you've also got a little erratum, not errata. So there was supposed to be one. But obviously, if you look at those cars, I mean, there's a Ford there. There's also a couple of French cars. I think, is that? Can't actually tell what this is. Is that a Honda? Not sure. But that obviously is a Citroen. I think it's a Zara rally car. Those are Hella toolings. Those are not Airfix toolings as far as I'm aware. So they do come from that Hella stable. I thought this might actually be an interesting one to cover on the channel, and obviously show you guys first. It does actually come, believe it or not, we can get these bits out, with some road bits. So it actually comes with these road sections. which I don't know whether these are Hella tools or whether Airfix had them at the same time. I suspect they are Hella pieces, but these are actually quite good. They're all the same, I think. I don't think there's any variation here. But basically you get a little piece of road and a little section like that. I think that's quite a nice little display piece. And the other thing is they do have a lip around the edge, which obviously you could get a case for. I don't know what size it is, whether it's a standard size. I've literally only just opened this up right now for you guys. I think that's quite neat. I think that'd be a great thing to have in a starter set or a gift set of a car. Kind of, you know, a little self-contained display piece, especially for younger model. I think that would be, you know, it's a nice idea, and it's just a very simple two-piece thing. So I imagine they're Hella tools, but who knows? Who knows? And then obviously you have the three cars themselves, the three 43rd scale. Hailing back to that time when transparencies were just shoved in as part of, you know, the same bag. It's all in one. But I thought that might be quite a good comparison, actually, with some of the, oh God, there's a fair bit of flash on that too. With some of the more modern Airfix 1/43rd scale starter sets, you actually get a fair substantial amount of decals in this, or decals. I did actually have so I kind of got, like, you know how workplaces have, you know, it's been 7 days since a serious incident. I think I should have a counter. Maybe I should put a counter up here or something, maybe a virtual one. It's been X number of days since somebody corrected my pronunciation of decals. So it doesn't matter whether you say decals or whether you say decals. Both are absolutely valid pronunciations. So if you go into Google and type, how do you pronounce decals, there's actually a post in it which says both are equally valid. So for those of you who think there's only one pronunciation, you are wrong. I tend to use decals because that is what my father said. It's the kind of East Midlands pronunciation of it. Not that my accent is particularly from where I come from originally, because I've traveled around a lot. I went to university up north and all those kinds of things. But decals is more prevalent in the US, obviously. But as with a lot of American, and I apologize for broad brushing here, a lot of Americans think that they are center of the universe, which is one of the reasons why a lot of this is historical, right? A lot of Brits are just like, oh, goddamn Americans kind of thing. And it's that kind of, you know, us and them rivalry. A lot of it's tongue in cheek, right? Especially nowadays and from people like myself. But I think in my father's day, especially when, you know, got a lot of GIs coming over to the UK towards the end of World War II, and it was, you know, they bought chocolate and nylons and stuff, and they were getting a lot of British women, and there was a sort of, you know, how they're coming over here at the end of the war, and there's a sense from the Americans like, we're coming out to, you know, bail you limeys out. So there's a bit of tension there, obviously, and I think a lot of it at the time was probably blowing off steam because war is basically hell. But I think that was continued on into the next generation as those soldiers and stuff, and a lot of their attitudes and, you know, their thoughts and stuff came through to their children, but my father's generation. And they kind of inherited that almost, I think, more than their parents. And plus you had the Cold War and a lot of British technology. You know, we were very free with what we gave advice with and stuff. And that wasn't necessarily reciprocated on the American side, technology-wise. So there was a perception of take rather than give. It's a lot more complicated than that, obviously. I'm talking about perceptions, not reality. So it kind of, I think, all boils down to that, and you keep people getting ingrained, saying, "Oh no, it's this way or it's that way." It's like, guys, this is not a hill to die on, right? There are far more important things in the world than how you say a word, even if it was wrong, right? chill out, guys. It's just like, it's such a small thing. But yeah, I had somebody comment on one of the videos, and I don't mind. I have no problem with feedback. I have no problem with strong feedback. If people give me strong feedback, I'm happy to give strong feedback back. It's kind of one of those mirror things. If you put in one thing, you'll probably get that out as well. But if people point out that I'm wrong, I'll take that, right? I'll go back and check. And I think it's incumbent on any creator or anybody who's reporting or you're talking about something with some, even if it's perceived authority, you need to check. So I missed out 6 kits when I was giving my Airfix review of their releases, and in the follow-up video I made, I mentioned that when after I explained the disappointment I felt, and after that people commented and some people talked about numbers. I went and checked. I did miss out 6 kits, so I actually put a note on my next video saying that, put a note on that video saying that. However, still liked all the main points. I didn't need to change the video, so I didn't take it down because of that. So if any of you think, well, why didn't you change that? You can't change videos on YouTube once uploaded. You can cut pieces out, but you can't edit them. You can't change them. You can't add to them. So that's why you don't see people doing that. It's because YouTube doesn't allow you. You have to take it down and upload a new video entirely. And the main point of the video was still valid. So it's still a light release. It's still very narrow. It still caters mainly to 172nd World War II modelers more than anything. Not exclusively, but it hasn't got the breadth of range like ICM's release, like Talier's release, like Revell's release. And then the other thing was, in the Revell video, I thought it was really interesting that Revell had released, or are planning to release, a 1/48 scale Dornier DO335 file, as in feel, as in pipe. Because only Tamiya have released a 48 scale one before. People quickly came back and said Monogram actually released one back in 1974. And I went back and checked, and sure enough, when I checked, because I do check all of this stuff on Scalemates, don't think I just pull it out my ass or anything. And of all of them, Scalemates is, and this is a general point with Scalemates, right? And important for you all to know, it's very pernickety. It's not a Google search, right? It won't do things similar to. It searches exactly what you put in. So if you put DO space 335 or DO 335, those are different searches and will pull up different things. And that's what I'd done, right? So I'd put in one. I can't remember which way it was. I put in one and it only brought the Tamiya kit up, no others in 1/48. I'm just like, oh, that's really interesting. That must be where it's come from. But of course, if you take the space out or put the space in, it comes up with the old Monogram one. And I was like, that's a mistake I made. So straight away I put an amendment on the video description saying it's not a Tamiya kit, it's Monogram kit, which is a shame because then it falls in line with all of the other old stuff that Revell are releasing, right? The old 1960s, 1970s molds, which are, they were good at the time. The Monogram kits were top of the range at the time. They don't hold their own against modern toolings. Which is fine if Revell are going to price them much less. If that feel is only like 20 quid, yeah, that's okay. If they said it was from 1974 and it was only £20 as well, I'd be even happier with them. But actually, it's less interesting than if it was a Tamiya release. So it's kind of disappointing. I think I almost wanted it to be a Tamiya kit. But the point of all of that massive sideways tourist destination preamble is that if you make a mistake, just call it and say, yep, I did. This is what it was. It is most likely. I mean, it could be the Tamiya kit, right? You never know. 99.9% it's going to be the old Monogram kit. But call it out. Don't try and stand on that hill and just say, no, actually, I was right. It is the Tamiya kit, or this is how you see decals or decals. Especially when, you can go and do an internet search in 2 minutes and say, oh, actually, both pronunciations are valid. You look like an idiot, right? Anyway, that was all of that. But I also had somebody say, you don't say, well, actually several people on the Italieri video say, you don't say Italieri, like you're saying it. And it's like, yeah, I kind of know, but I also, it's muscle memory now. I would have to make a concerted effort every single time I say the word. And life's too short. I've got other stuff to do. So yeah, just say he says it wrong. You know, that's the way Alex says it. I'm not trying to defend it. I'm not saying I'm not wrong. I'm just saying it's unlikely I'm going to be able to change it because I've been saying it that way for, I don't know, it must be 40 years probably, because again, you learn a lot of stuff from your parents. My dad was the modeler, you know, so I learned from him. So he said a lot of things incorrectly. So anyway, going way back to this set, it does have, which came out that I was saying about decals, stroke decals, and you get quite a lot. So you get, that's the citron, obviously, that way around. You get, I mean, wow, that's there's some colors on that. You don't really actually get the color there, but it's really orange, that forward orange. It's like day glow. And actually, one of the paints is also one of the almost undoubtedly dried up paints is that day glow orange. I mean, these are all sealed, right? In theory, I could already see they're dried out. In theory, there should have been nowhere for any moisture to go, right? Not the case. That's probably actually the dullest one. I don't know, is that a Toyota? I don't have my glasses here, and the lighting here is weird to be able to read this. No, it's a Peugeot. So 2 French cars, they're hella molds. The other thing you get is this. That is actually a set of decals. You can't really see very well the white, again, because the light here is quite intense. It's a set of decals for these, for plants and stuff, which I thought was quite interesting. Just there, but I don't know what this is. Blood on the road? Not sure. But you got the white lines for the side of the road and stuff. I just thought it was quite neat. You've even got an instruction bit about where to put the decals there. So, yeah, that one is, it's almost like there's a blood stain on the side of this where the car has scraped where a bystander was. Obviously, not really what it is. Please don't think I'm suggesting that, but yeah. You get a lot of bits here, and then of course the instruction sheets. And again, this shows you how far Airfix have travelled in not that long a time, right? When you see the old, you know, single sheet, very Hella-esque kind of instructions. You know, one step showing you to put in, you know, all of the wheels. One step showing you all of the interior, one step showing basically everything else, and then it's painting. But I don't think I've done a car on the channel as yet. So I thought that might be an interesting set to kind of show what is a particular time period, you know, a little slot of time, which was quite short. And a lot of these sets that Airfix stroke Humbrol did from Hella Mouldings, because they've really distributed and used the names between the two, weren't around for very long. So I don't know. I think I've got a set of bikes. I think I might have mentioned this on another stream, which actually doesn't appear on Scalemates. It's a set of 3 Hella tooled bikes under the Airfix brand as a set, and I looked it up and you can't find it. So it must have just been issued once as a set, very briefly, and you know, it didn't actually catch the attention of anyone long enough for it to go on Scalemates. But I thought that was an interesting little bit. I might put up a poll at some point or poll, depending on how you say poll or poll, on the channel about cars, because I've also got, in fact, John Alec is in tonight, so it's John Alec's fault, this. for the, I can't remember what it's called, is the Japanese JDM, I think it's JDM group build on Facebook. Correct me if I'm wrong, John. As I've said, I'm often wrong, but at least I'm honest about it. He's doing an Aoshima, is it Toyota? I can't remember, but a 124 scale Japanese sports car, which is what the group build is. And I thought, that's quite. I've not done a car, and I've not done one on the channel. And actually, what I'd really like to do is I had a Mitsubishi GTO, which I've shown John actually on Discord. I'd quite like to do that, as mine was, if I can find a way of doing the alloys, because it had aftermarket alloys. If not, I'll just have to kind of fudge it. So I've ordered a Tamiya do a GTO, Mitsubishi GTO 4-wheel drive. So that is arriving at some point, I hope next week. But that got me onto the whole car thing. So I might do a poll on what people would like to see in the car bits, because I'm not I would say, a natural car modeler. So I think throwing it out to the crowd might be a good thing to do. So that's the whole car bit that I wanted to talk about. Let's get into something which has been a bit more current and talk about the Eagle. So this is where I am. So you may have seen this. So I put this on Instagram and on Discord. This is where the current state is. Again, you can't see very well from this. Maybe if I move a bit further back. So yesterday I sprayed this while I was in the shop, and it was a little quiet. Just with primer. So I did it with Outlaw. Well, actually, I didn't do it with Outlaw primer. I did it with Outlaw medium sea grey, because that's kind of the right grey primer color. I'm not particularly bothered about a particular color when it comes to primer. Outlaw works great in terms of bonding to the plastic, so I don't think you need a specific primer with Outlaw paints. And then I just used extra dark sea grey with a bit of black. I don't tend to like panel lining in straight black, because there's nowhere you can go from black, further down you can go. So that's just all panel lined in extra dark sea grey, toned down with black. So it's a really dark version of that. And then I just used the Outlaw RAF white and just did a random scribble pattern, mainly on the panels. But you may be able to see some of these places I did go over the panel lines. This is just to create a bit of texture underneath the mist coats that will go over, so it looks a bit more interesting. Flat panels of color often look unrealistically uniform, and that just creates that little bit of visual interest that your eyes, it just makes it look more natural. So your eyes are kind of programmed to recognize certain things in nature as normal. And if you ever see something, if you've ever seen the B-21 fly, for instance, your eye is drawn to that because it looks so unnatural. The first time I saw it, it looks like a UFO. It doesn't move in the way that you think it should. It doesn't look like, it's very unnatural shape. So you notice it straight away, which is bizarre, right, for a stealth aircraft. It doesn't have a bird-like shape. Your mind is just like, and biologically we're kind of, evolved to do this. It's just like, that is different. I need to notice it because it might try to kill me. That's the biological bit. So very flat, very even colors, our mind sort of is drawn to in a way as it's like, that looks weird. And that's what you want to avoid, which is why people do this kind of randomized undercoat to make that look. So that is all ready for its splinter camo. So tonight, one of the main things I'm going to be doing is masking. You can also see I've got the canopy piece on here. So there's no reason not to glue it on now. So I did. Right, before I ramble anymore, because I have been talking for a good 25 minutes, let me go back to the chat. Okay, let me just go back a little bit further because there's been quite a few comments. Well done, Mark, taking the plunge, ordering a new airbrush. So that's a good aid memoir for me, actually. But you didn't order your airbrush from me. Shame on you. Very joking. I actually did this with the Lacore brush, the 0.3 millimeter nozzle. It's a decent brush. I haven't used the 0.35, I think it is, or 0.38, the other brush that they sent me yet. I went straight for the 0.3 because that's the size I normally use for most stuff. I didn't have any problem with that panel lining, nor with the, doing the scribbly bits afterwards was a doddle. It was really easy. So yeah, so far no complaints with the Lacore brush. I know there have been some people who have done reviews on them who really like them, and people have said, well, is that because you've got a special review one that heard about some QC issues? I think QC issues are probably just something they're working through as a company, but I don't know. I didn't have any problems. I can only report on my own anecdotal evidence, but it seems like a decent brush. Let's have a little look. Down we go. Somebody was talking about, there we go. Peugeot 206 Citroens are, about 2002. So getting on for 20 odd years ago, which fits right with the timeline of when it's all under Humbrol ownership, or direction at least, maybe not ownership. It was Hobbyco, wasn't it? I think. And then somebody else mentioned 1/43 being an odd ratio. Yeah, and this came up recently, actually, in a conversation, and I can't remember where it actually does come from. And it did make sense when it was told to me, and I can't remember. If I was more of a car modeler, I'd have paid more attention. But yeah, 43rd scale to me is a bit of a weird one, because I think 1/48th, we're used to from aircraft and now a lot of AFVs. And I don't know how much physical difference there would be. I'm not sure if you had a 1/43rd scale vehicle next to a 1/48 scale aircraft, you wouldn't be able to see, obviously, oh, that's massively out of scale, unless you were very familiar with both subjects and, you had figures with them or something. But it does seem like an odd one, and I wish I could remember what it was now. If anybody does know in the comments, please let us know off the top of your heads, because I don't. Oh, wow. Okay. Finally decided to bite the bullet and get the YouTube channel going. Well, send us a link. We'll try and get you a few views. It's, I would say it's not all it's cracked up to be, but I don't know whether it's cracked up to be anything. I think, and I go over this in the video I'm doing at the moment about, I mentioned last time, what goes into one of my unboxing videos. I can only talk about me because I know other people do it differently. But I think, somebody asked me about this before, about advice on, doing, what do you think of my channel? And I said, well, do you want supportive feedback, or do you want critical feedback? Because that's different, right? I always try to give supportive feedback to people, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for support. But support can come in different ways. And if you don't know people, critical feedback can sound negative, right? But it's also how we learn, right? If somebody comes to me and says, hey, I don't know, you're saying decals in the wrong way, I'll tell them to piss off. But that's joking. That's a different thing. I think because it's so easy to start a YouTube channel, right? But I think there are a couple of things you really need to consider. For yourself and for your audience, and ultimately it's for yourself, right? For yourself is, why are you doing it? So what is your aim? What is success going to look like to you? Now I sound like I'm in my day job of corporate stuff, but if you don't have an idea of that, how do you know you've won? How do you feel satisfied about it? I started my channel off for me. I started it off as a way of finishing projects. Okay. And if I could impart any of the accumulated knowledge, because it's not my knowledge, it's stuff I've learned mostly from other modelers, either directly at model clubs and friends, or vicariously through magazines and books and, the old-fashioned way of learning, book learning. What's anybody ever learned from book learning? So I think if you've got an idea of that, so for me, I still do the channel for me as a way of finishing those projects. It's also evolved during that time now because I've had, good engagement with people. Is that I do? It's not that I feel obligated. It's just that I do enjoy that connection with people, that being able to share stuff with people and help people. And that might sound condescending. It's not meant to be condescending. It's really like people that are coming back to the hobby or new to the hobby. If they can learn something, however basic it is, and they didn't get put off modeling, they save some time or something, then for me that's great. That's very rewarding. I don't think anybody can ask for more than that. The caveat to that is, and the reason I say you have to kind of have an idea of what you're trying to achieve, is for that, because the other part of it is it's a bloody slog. A lot of the time it's grueling and thankless. YouTube, for the great majority of creators, I would say, is hard work and demoralizing. And that's true about a lot of things, I think, today. But the great majority of people, unless, and this is a sad sign of our times, right? If you're a pretty young girl, then you can pretty much put anything up on the internet and somebody will watch it, right? That's just the commoditization of sex, really, that our current society is about. So I get a lot of suggestions on my feed, which are TikTok-like stuff, which is bullshit, really, right? But like, some 20-year-old girl skipping, it's just like, what the fuck would I want to watch this? But of course, a lot of people will click it because she's a cute girl, right? I mean this with the greatest of respect, guys, but more than 99% of my audience is male, and I thank you for all of or at least the 2 women that watch my channel. I think that is fantastic and it's great, and I wish the hobby could diversify more. But it is a very male-dominated hobby, right? And most of us are not particularly. I'm not a particularly charismatic or attractive person. I'm just a guy. I am that most hated of people in our society at the moment. I am a straight white guy. Middle-aged straight white guy from corporate life. You couldn't get more toxic than me in terms of the woke ideology. But that doesn't mean you don't get any of that draw. So your content, and this is the other part of the very round the houses point I'm getting to, what is your content offering your audience? Now, if you're doing it just for yourself and you just want a platform to put your stuff on and you don't care about how many views you get, then that doesn't matter, right? Because you don't have to offer anything to anybody and you're happy. And that's good. And if that's your aim, then you have no issues and you won't get demoralized because it doesn't matter if anybody else watches it, right? I think most people aren't doing it for that. I think it's because they do want some sort of recognition. They do want some sort of showcase. For me, when I was doing it, I wanted, and this is true in my work life as well, right? If you have an audience, if you have people, so I've led a lot of teams, teams of like 10 to 15, 20 people. If you have a team depending on your input, or in YouTube terms, if you have an audience who are waiting for or expecting something from you, that's a really good motivator, right? Because you have people to disappoint. It's like being a parent. If you've got a child, you have to set yourself to maybe a higher standard than if you're just a single guy on his own. It doesn't matter. You can get fat, you can eat what you like, you can stay at whatever you like. It doesn't matter as long as you're alive for work or whatever. I guess with kids, you can't do that, right? I remember my ex and I were as sick as dogs. My ex used to be work in a care home, and she caught some horrific like sickness, like vomiting and diarrhea bug from it. And despite the fact, we try to separate ourselves as much as possible. I ended up catching it as well. When you have that sort of thing and your young toddlers are waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you're trying for them not to get it, but you also have to care for all their needs as well. You have to do everything you can in your power to isolate them while supporting them. It's tough, right? I don't think there's many harder jobs in the world. With an audience, you have a similar thing, right? So you have to think about, okay, if I'm creating this for somebody else as well, for an audience, I have to think about the quality of what I'm putting out. So then you have to think about what camera you're using, what lighting you're using, what background are you using, all of those other things, So you have to think about the quality. And then you have to think, well, what do I add that's different from every other single channel that's out there? What's unique about my channel? Why would somebody watch me and not Plasmo or Night Shift or John Alec or Moss or, whoever it is, whoever you are, what? And of course, to start with, you're going to be aiming, well, you can aim high, but you need to compete, obviously, with smaller channels. It'd be great if you've got that skill to be able to go straight in and compete with Night Shift. But I think there are a few people who just start a YouTube channel on the off chance who are like that. And with those things in mind, with why you're doing it and what you're adding, that gives you a very clear focus. And I think you need to have that as you're starting your channel, not necessarily before, but as you're starting it for sure, and as you go along, to keep that motivation. Because if you say you want to get to 1 million subs, right, which I think in modeling channels is almost unheard of, then if you don't have like a way of doing it, that's going to be really, really disheartening. If you get to 5,000 subs, and you just think, and you can't get above that, it's going to be really disheartening. If you think I'm never going to get there, then what is the motivation for you to do more? Again, as I said before, if it's just because you want to make videos for yourself, it doesn't matter, right? But that's why I think you really got to have that in your mind. So that's the only advice, 2 pieces of advice I'd really give is, find a reason for yourself and find a reason for your audience. And I think if you've got those 2 things, you've got really solid grounds for a channel, and all of the horror that comes with it. And you only have my sympathies about how you will now be a slave to the YouTube algorithm for the next however long you want to do it for. But congratulations. I don't mean that as discouragement at all. Quite the opposite. I think if you've got those 2 things, no matter how slowly you grow, how you pace it, what you want, you'll be successful. Because if you've got your target, if you know who you're doing it for, and again, if you're only doing it for yourself, or you just want to show, maybe you want to show people in your area, what you're doing in your hobby, so you're not looking to get 1 million subs. You're just looking to, I want to become somebody who's known in my local town as a modeler, and maybe I want to do commissions for people, and that's what I want to show. That's a nice tight reason, rationale for doing what you want to do. So I would encourage anybody who wants to do that to do it. But if you don't have that, it's so easy, again, for your own mental health. If you switch on the computer, you've uploaded a video at night, come in the morning, it's got 3 views. That's, and I'm sure other creators can tell you, we've all been there. It feels crap, especially if you've worked really hard on something. Build videos, I can tell you this, build videos are one of the worst performing videos a YouTube creator, a modeling YouTube creator can make. So yeah, it's tough. It is tough. But if you've got that reason for being for yourself, and you've got a reason why people will watch, I think you're good. Okay, that was a very long little diatribe about that, but like that. Decals, I presume you're talking about Decals. I think Matt from Model Minutes just called them stickers. I think he referred to them as transfers once, which my dad used to call them transfers always, because they are, and actually it's technically correct, right? They are water slide transfers. That was what they were kind of originally referred to. So again, it blows my mind sometimes, and of course, being on any social media platform, you're exposed to the whole spectrum. I talked about the Gaussian distribution curve of all kinds of things. People are like that. Majority of people, within that 1.96 sigma of average, are normal people. Yeah, you get people who are slightly weird, and you get people who are, slightly really good. And then you get that extreme ends, which are like the saints of the world. People who just do good and expect nothing in return. People give their time and money for, just good causes and stuff. They're fairly rare, right? True altruists. And then you get the other little bit who are complete assholes no matter what, and you're exposed to it all on the internet. And I think the internet cuts out a lot of that big middle chunk and just has sort of the more extreme fringes stuck together. But yeah, I mean, the idea that how you pronounce something is so important that somebody feels bidden, to comment on a video. Or I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and I've probably disliked maybe 3 or 4. That's the number of videos I can remember disliking in probably the last 3 years, right? Because you really have to feel, for me at least, you have to feel something visceral. It has to react like people spreading bad science. Bad science for me is a real no-no. If they're spreading BS, and they're getting a lot of traction with that, yeah, I think that should be taken off. It's misinformation. So yeah, I'll dislike a video like that. But generally, if I don't like a video, I won't watch the whole thing. I'll just like, no, it's not for me, and I'll leave, right? So the idea that some of my videos, I mean, I do get that. I'm sure there's one person who dislikes every single video I do. They don't, every single video of mine that they watch, because there'll be some videos I'll put up and it'll get a dislike within minutes, right? And not something controversial, just like, a catalog release or something, or not even as controversial as that, an unboxing, How do you feel so aggrieved about an unboxing that you dislike a video? I honestly don't get it. But yeah, pronouncing something specifically to annoy people is almost worth it. So thank you for that suggestion. Maybe I will use my decales and in the future. Maybe that can become a meme. Yeah, exactly. Call them transfers. It doesn't save arguments. Oh God, no, it doesn't save arguments. It just puts you in another camp. That's a good question. Should you buy a wet palette? So my first initial reaction, well, there's 2 parts to this, right? One, should you buy a wet palette? I would say if you've never used a wet palette before in your life, no, you shouldn't, because it's really easy to make one and try out if it fits your painting style. Second thing is, it depends on what you're painting, right? If you are painting like figures and you're doing a lot of detail work, cockpit work and stuff, it's probably worth it. If you're doing blending and volumetric painting, for sure, because it increases the life of your paints. Not the life, the bench time, if you like, of your paints. But if you want to make a wet palette, it's really easy. If you take like a standard plastic takeaway container, at least in the UK, if not like just a standard Tupperware container, one of those little, what are they, about 6mm, what's that, 1/4 inch sponges that you get for like wiping the sink and things. Get one of those, and then get baking paper, like greaseproof paper, but baking paper is the better one, not the shiny stuff, like the brown flat stuff. You soak the sponge in water, put it in the bottom, you put the paper on top. It'll take a little bit to push it down so that it gets wet on one side, enough to stick and not curl up. And that is a wet palette. That is all a wet palette is, right? The ones you can buy do that same thing. They just use better materials and have better sealing and stuff. But that, I would say, try it out, get used to it, and then look. If you're going to buy one, Redgrass Games' wet palette is really, really good. It's probably the best one you can get. A lot of people do like vac formed plastic ones. they can split and stuff. The Red Grass Games one is an injection molded plastic thing with some really nice quality, like high density, like really tiny pore size foam. You get a couple of those, and the paper is cut to size really nicely. I mean, this is all trimming, right? You know, again, you could just cut baking paper, but the Red Grass Games one is the one I'd recommend if you are going to buy one. It is expensive. It's like 30 quid or something for the small one. And it comes with an elastic, like a big, not an elastic band, but an elasticated fabric band to hold it together. It's nice. But it's a luxury item for sure. Yeah, so exactly. There we go. There we go, Gary. You are already earning some YouTube chops in terms of, maybe that's your first video, how to make a wet palette. And yeah, other people have said, you know, what would you like to paint? It really does depend. Again, if you're doing blending and things, wet palettes do definitely help. So if you're doing figure painting, faces and stuff, they can be really good. Yeah. If you're just painting like aircraft and stuff, it's probably not as much reason to do it. But they are good things to get to use, and they will help you for doing all kinds of stuff, but figures especially. And if you watch any figure painting channels, so if you think so ones I watch are things like Squidmar, Ninjon, Miniac, Marco Frissoni, I've mentioned before, who's a fabulous painter and has an outrageous accent. Try telling him how you pronounce things. Just looking through these. Do I happen to have any old F1 cars in stock? I do have. I don't have the Tyrrell 006. I do have a Revell McLaren, I think. I can't remember which one. But no, that old Tyrrell is quite nice. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff, as I say, secondhand kits are predominantly not on the website because, again, I've mentioned before, it takes a lot to put them on. You can guarantee as soon as I put a secondhand kit onto the website, it'll get sold in the shop. And of course, you can't. The way my shop system works is if you put an item on. So say if I get an Airfix kit, Airfix brought out a new kit, say the Liberator. I can put all the information on the website. Say I buy one and get it in, and it sells straight away. And I think that's great. You know, and 3 people more order them. I can order them from Airfix, and then I can just adjust in the system. You know, I've got 4 more in stock, so 4 done. Secondhand kit, that's never going to happen, of course, because you get a secondhand kit, it's one, right? Even if you get exactly the same kit, it's likely to be in a different condition, so you're going to need different pictures and stuff, so it's not worth it. So if you're interested in those kinds of things, just send an email to the shop address. Now, for mispronunciation, I'll come back to that. You won't beat my grandmother. She insisted that gatto was pronounced gatox. Pate was produced pate to write with gate. So my mother actually is, bless her, she's still about, loved to bits, but she is one of the most stubborn people I've ever met. So stubborn, in fact, that when I went to university and was talking about vaccinations, so we just did a whole section on microbiology. So I was really into microbiology in one sense. And I came back and talked about the measles virus. And my mum was like, measles isn't a virus. And I'm just like, but it is. You know, that's not an opinion. That's a fact, right? And I went and showed her my textbook, showed her the electron micrographs of, she wouldn't have it, absolutely wouldn't have it. So she not only mispronounces words, she invents words. So you may or may not have heard of the word obstreperous, which kind of means stubborn as well. So I always thought that was obstruculus, because that's the word my mother said. Of course, there is no such word as obstruculus. It is obstreperous. But she's so obstruculous, she didn't admit it. Okay. So the F-15, unfortunately, is not going to be Skywarp. I've already had, I think, in fact, wasn't it you, Jaws, that said this? It is going to be a Splinter Camouflage Aggressor Squadron F-45. F-45? F-15. Wow, I'm thinking way ahead. Well, I haven't had, as many people know, I haven't had good experience with Harder and Steenbeck. So I've got an Evolution, but I wish you well with it. Let me know if it's good, if you get on well with it. I find them, I would say, over-engineered and picky. They are, and I'm not a careful airbrusher, I should say. And I don't particularly like my tools to be pernickety. Going for some interesting words tonight. Pernickety. I prefer being able to be fairly rough and ready and deal with any consequences, rather than having something which, the moment it looks at a slightly too thick paint, blocks and then requires a lot of maintenance. So I just find them a bit high maintenance. Okay, just going through. Probably because I'm talking a lot, there's a lot of comments after I think I'm going to get through. So yeah, the Gary 39 Galeri. There's another thing. How do you pronounce Galeri? Is it Galeri or Galeri? Galeri? Anyway, so one of the things you'll notice with, and somebody asked me this actually in the members Discord, about cleaning out an airbrush and still getting blowback. Two reasons that you possibly get blowback in an airbrush 99% of the time. One is you've got a blockage somewhere in the nozzle, or on the needle itself. It's usually in the nozzle. I'd say 9 out of 10 times, if you've got a blockage, it's going to be in the nozzle, because that's the smallest part, right? It's the weakest link. And you can clean it out, think you've cleaned it out, and still get that. Most airbrush cleaners, so when this was mentioned earlier, it actually contains something called 2-butoxyethanol, which is a water-soluble solvent, which acts as a surfactant. So a surfactant is something like a detergent. You can think of it like that. But it's water soluble, right? If you've got water in your airbrush cleaner, in my opinion, it's not strong enough. It needs to be 100% solvent. It needs to be something that will, as I quoted earlier, will burn all of that crap off down to the metal. Yeah. The seals in airbrushes are designed to be resistant. They're mainly things like PTFE, which is basically resistant to almost everything on Earth. So you don't have any problem. But yeah, that little nozzle piece is where all your crap is going to end up eventually, which is why it's really important that you don't get it there to start with, right? Or have an airbrush that is relatively tolerant to that. And one of the ways to clean your airbrush at the end of your session, obviously, jack the pressure up, put your cleaner in, blast it through, blast it back, blast it through, until you're confident that you've got nothing in there, and then you're good. I usually leave a little bit of solvent, a little bit of thinner in the airbrush itself. Put the cap on so that it doesn't just evaporate away, and then you're good for the next session, right? The other thing is exactly as you've mentioned here. Something isn't sealed, so it's finding the easiest path of resistance, because there's a seal missing or there's a seal not seated right, is back through the airbrush, because you're not directing it in the way it should go. So those are the two things. You've either got a blockage to the nozzle, which is forcing the air to go back, or you've got another path because of a not seated properly something, or broken seal or whatever, and it's blowing back. That's what happened to my Harder and Steenbeck before I then dropped it and broke the nozzle, which is a £20 mistake that you don't want to repeat every time you use your airbrush. Wow, there's a lot of questions here. Ups and downs of being in a model club. I think generally there are only ups. I would say the positives of being in a model club are you get good engagement with people. I mean, you're there with a group of like-minded people, right? Even if they're doing different subjects, they're all modelers. I mean, the downs are you get that bell-shaped curve, right? And if you're unlucky in a model club, you'll get more of the assholes than, or the asshole end of the spectrum, than the good end of the spectrum. In my experience, it's only my anecdotal experience, but I think it's generally applicable from what I've done, speaking to other people. The great majority of modelers are like the great majority of people. They're pretty nice people. So, and most of the model clubs I've been to are generally very socially oriented. And I think that is a genuine positive because we do have quite an isolated and solitary hobby. It's good to get that interaction, as tonight here with you guys. Downs are only really if you've got that. Well, two downs. One is a mild down. The mild down, I would say, is a lot of time model clubs, you don't end up doing anything modeling at all. Like I haven't done for the last hour, is you end up talking about all kinds of stuff. And it might start off model related, it'll go off because you meet interesting people, right? Who have interesting stories, who ask interesting questions, if you guys have again tonight. So you end up meandering. So my model club was the North Staffs Model Club. Great bunch of guys, not affiliated with any organization. Just a bunch of guys used to get together and talk about models. I always took a model with me. I very rarely did anything of any substantive value to it. So you could say it was a lot of a waste of time of taking a model somewhere. But I loved it. I really look forward to model night. So I think I would say 90% ups, 10% mild downs in that, you're not actually doing any modeling. If I spent the time traveling to my model club, the hours I spent at the model club and traveling back, if I just spent that doing a model, I'd have got much more done. But I wouldn't have enjoyed it a tenth as much. The other positive, possible negative is if you're unlucky with the people in the club, right? In which case you don't go again. So I would say it's all up. Skipping video next Sunday. Is there a reason that I should be? Not sure. Let me know. I think I've missed that one. I don't think I'm going to be skipping unless I've forgotten something, which is entirely possible. Unless you're talking about the short skipper. That's really so. Okay, in terms of what I get from the channel now that I didn't expect, as I say, I started the channel as a way of making myself finish stuff, right? The feedback that I've had, an engagement I've had, I never imagined myself doing live streams. I just didn't think I would want to, that I'd enjoy it or people would be interested at all. To know that, things like scale modeling, in any small part that my content could have contributed to somebody, having a better mental health life. I mean, I've had clinical depression for, I don't know, at least the past couple of decades, right? So I understand what it's like. And mental health, I've done mental health awareness courses at work in the past for people, and people are very quick to dismiss it, but it's actually something that it's one of those untold of things, right? Because everybody just thinks, oh, everybody gets sad sometimes. That's not what depression is. And mental health issues in general are often dismissed because they're quite taboo. Whereas if somebody came to work and said, I've got a splitting migraine, or I've got, I'm constipated, or I've got diarrhea or something, you'd be like, right, okay, take these tablets or take the day off or something, go and rest and stuff. But you would medicate for it, you take headache tablets or whatever. And yet people really will say, oh, I've got some mental health, I'm feeling depressed. It's like, right, go ahead and take some, sertraline or something. Because there's that kind of stigma. But if I can in any way, as I say, have helped bring somebody to modeling, and that's helped them in whatever way, from boredom, from mental health issues, whatever it is, that to me is is a huge thing, right? I think that is such a rewarding thing. It's one of the things that I really enjoyed about my commercial life, was being a team leader, being a leader in general, being able to help people. I always said that leadership isn't a senior, it's not an authority figure. Really, a leader should be somebody who serves the people under them, under the hierarchy way, to be successful. So if you look at the army, your sergeant wants you as a squad to be the best that they can. He wants them to be successful. He's not doing it so that he can become, a sergeant major, or at least he shouldn't be. And I think that kind of the reward through seeing others succeed is phenomenally mentally rewarding for me. So thank you for the comment. And I think that's a great one. Exactly. Camaraderie is a huge part of it, and a lot of that, I think a lot of that is dismissed, especially, and I don't think I've made any secret of this, is I believe myself to be a liberal in the way that liberal meant back in 1995, which was that you treat people as people with mutual respect. If everybody did that, the world would be great. You wouldn't have people trying to, stamp on each other's toes or territory. You wouldn't have people invading stuff, because you'd have mutual respect and you wouldn't go there. You wouldn't have people talking about, as they are now, banning certain words and books and freedom of speech and comedians and all this kind of thing. To me, wokeism, that kind of woke ideology is as close to fascism as we have got since World War II. And I think it's very, very sad. And I think if you look at the way comedy is trying to be suppressed in a lot of countries, Western countries, I'm talking about now, that lack of camaraderie, the fact that you can have a laugh and a joke with somebody and you're not insulting them, even if you are insane, right? We insult each other. If you know somebody well, you'll insult them. If you don't know somebody that well, you're polite to them. So, it's a thing. I think this is one of the things in the American and British military, when they meet. And it's like, if you got to the level when they're calling you names and like taking the piss out of you, you have earned their respect. And I think that is, in a more dilute sense, maybe true of all of us. But yeah, the camaraderie to me, being able to have that kind of dialogue with people and without the fear of recrimination, right? It's just like, because there shouldn't be any. Right? You're more than welcome, Gary. And anything we can do to help you with the channel, let us know. You see, transfers. That's what we should start a movement. Maybe I'll get a T-shirt printed. It's transfers, not decal stroke decals. Yeah, or decalis. David, welcome. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Most grateful. The video about the membership is still on my to-do list. It's one of those things that I keep meaning to finish, and then another two things come in on my another letter comes from my sister about my divorce, and I'm just like, oh god, I need to deal with this. But thank you very much. Yes, of course you're not allowed to say that now. We'd be cancelled. Is that how I know I've made it? I've got my own dislike guy. So those of you who know me, and people who know me well, know that I don't just call a spade a single-handed soil removal instrument. I'll just call it a spade. It's just like, what's the point? Our lives are short. We can expect our 70 years and 10. We can expect a little bit more these days, but expectation isn't necessarily reality. And life is fragile. Let's not sweat the small stuff. More than welcome. As I say, They're good things, but yeah, go ahead, try it yourself. Parking around the shop is very good. So we have literally free parking for, I think it's an hour, directly in front of the shop, like literally 15 feet away. That's often full because people use it all the time, pulling it out. There is also parking at the Memorial Hall, which is actually my landlord, at the back, which is free, I think, for 48 hours. So if you're at my shop for more than 48 hours, you have spent too much money, and I will send you home. But yeah, parking is really good. If that's full, there's another car park which leads off from it, and if that's full, there's another car park down by the co-op. So there's tons of parking. At the moment, I will give you a proviso, is that they are putting broadband in Wincanton at the moment, and it's an absolute effing nightmare. It took me 15 minutes to move about 20 feet the other day just to park in front of the shop to move some stuff in. So at the moment, parking's fine. Getting to a parking space, yeah, not so good. But yeah, you're more than welcome. Please do pop in. Steve, no. Well, so for one thing, sometimes my email does block emails. So I don't know whether it's because I use Gmail, whether it's Google, because Google can be a bit severe, or I actually tend to use Outlook in my Google account. So I actually use Outlook, which feeds into that. I'm not sure where things get stopped, but they often do get stopped and put into junk. I did get your email, Steve. I did initially reply. I don't know whether you got that. But until you kind of until you actually pull the trigger and say, yes, this is what we want, and this is how much I want to spend, and then we'll go through PayPal. Until that point, I don't pull the trigger because I don't want to get people feeling that they're obliged to go through with something that we're just talking about. So if you're absolutely happy, then let's go for it. So I'll send you an email after the stream, Steve, just to make sure that you've got mine, because I don't know whether you have got that first email I sent. Well, okay, we're talking about the H&S. I'm not so sure, Mark. So I have. It's not the TimberTech. It's actually Fengder, the people that make the TimberTech. They rebrand. It's rebranded as a lot of things. The Fengder brushes. I've got a couple, and I've actually used them with no issues at all. So yeah, I will. Everybody's experience is different. Not every airbrush, and it's one of the things. If people ask for a recommendation of an airbrush, I can tell them what I use and what the kinds of things I'd recommend. Like I'd recommend you start with a 0.3 millimeter. I wouldn't go any lower than that until you've had at least a year of experience on an airbrush, because the time I need to go down to a 0.2, a 0.3, this Gallery brush, if you've not seen LPJ Model's review of the Gallery brush, he does a mottle camouflage on a 1/72nd scale Focke-Wulf 190. I mean, he's a great airbrusher, so there is that. But it's capable of doing that, right? So the time you need to go down to a 0.2, every time you go down, if you go down to a 0.2, that's, if you think of it, every time you step down from a 0.5 to a 0.4, 0.3, 0.2, you're increasing the risk of getting a blockage somewhere, and you have to be more careful about how you mix your paint, the paint you're using, because not all paints are ground the same, how it reacts with different thinners, because you can put thinner in paint. Tamiya is terrible for this. If you thin Tamiya with water, you can crash stuff out of solution because it's used to being in a higher alcohol solution. So not every airbrush is for everybody, but I would give general recommendations about, unless you really know what you're doing, don't go below a 0.3, and probably a 0.35 or 0.38 will be okay for most people if you're just in big areas, masking and stuff. This kind of stuff, this kind of pre-shading, panel lining and stuff. I mean, I did this. This took about an hour to do, from being a plastic to being in that state. with an interruption because I had a customer come in. And it's rather rude to carry on airbrushing while you have a customer. So you don't need a huge amount of skill necessarily to be able to do something like that with a 0.3mm nozzle. And some people think, well, a 0.2 will give me better precision and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but it's more difficult to use. Like not everybody drives a Formula One car because, it's the best car you could drive in terms of, speed and cornering and everything. It takes a lot of training to be able to do it. Most people can't keep a Formula One car going. They'll stall it immediately. Even people who are used to driving high performance cars. But anyway, so I'm not sure. I'm still to be convinced. I've got a new nozzle and needle for my H&S. I'm going to give it another go. But at the moment, I know a lot of people love them. A lot of people praise them. But yeah, my personal experience hasn't been great with them. So let's call it the gallery. Yeah, why not? So I'm just going to take a quick drink. I think I've got a little bit of a cold. I don't know. Oh, there we go. And I'm getting a bit Qatari, I think. That is a great tip. Cellulose thinners. It's a great tip, and they work really well. And I used to use cellulose thinners as my my get out of jail free card. Right, I've left stuff to dry in my airbrush on more times than I can count. Right, and I've always managed to retrieve it. I've never managed to completely destroy an airbrush. They're pretty tough things. You have to really work at destroying them because you can replace most of the parts anyway. Cellulose thinners is what you use. When something is dried in there, you've hacked out the dried pieces and blown what you can through. Then put cellulose thinners in, and that will burn most stuff. The problem, or the potential problem with cellulose thinners is if you don't blow them all through or use something that's missable with them to clean them out, there are areas in your airbrush that it doesn't matter how long, and this is why you need to take them apart to clean them really thoroughly and stuff, that will never get completely. There are little dead spaces. It's physics, really. And they will sit there. And then if you use a water-based solvent, even at like a fairly high alcohol content one like Tamiya, that won't mix. And then you can get blockages based on solvent miscibility rather than particles. And that's a bit of a bitch to deal with. So I would say it's a great tip, but use with caution. If you've got IPA, isopropyl alcohol, or in Europe, you can get pure alcohol, actually just over the counter, because they're not as much of a nanny state as the UK, where we can't because you get charged duty on that. So it costs like a few euros for a bottle of alcohol, 97, 98%. And that is miscible with anything. Isopropanol and ethanol are really good solvents. They're really miscible with everything. So I always used to use cellulose to actually clean it through till that comes clean, back plastic, all that kind of stuff. And then mix some alcohol with it, blow that through, and then pure alcohol. And then that goes through. And then the alcohol is miscible with the water as well. So then you can blow alcohol water through, and then you can go to water. So you can go backwards and forwards. Some people don't like to do that at all and like to have airbrushes dedicated to a particular solvent. But you pay your money, you take your choice, right? Okay. That is very kind of you to say, Chris. Thank you very much. Moss is Airfix through and through. That is true. It's. I'm sure if you cut him open, he'll have the Airfix logo. That's his spine. He doesn't. That's not to say spineless. That sounded wrong. Only to mean that his spine would be in the shape of an Airfix logo. He's a very, very Airfix loyal person. And we indeed we love him for it. Thank you very much. That is so the hunter. Yes, I will be. it got left for a while because I got into doing all the stencils, and oh my god, there were a lot of stencils on that Airfix kit. So it kind of got to that point where I was just getting a bit snowblind with all the stencils. But it's still on the modeling desk in my man cave modeling area. So yes, it's still there. It hasn't been forgotten. None of my projects have been forgotten. And it's the reason I started the channel, to finish those projects. So it will come back. And I do plan to do the, this is the out of the box kit build. And then there'll be the throw everything I possibly can at it build. Excellent. The kit's arrived. Fantastic. Thanks for letting me know, Stuart. Apologies for the delays there. I actually had some. So I used the Royal Mail for my deliveries, principally because as a small business, it's not worth going with DPD or Every and stuff. They can do cheap stuff, but when you start adding on tracking and things, it gets expensive. The Royal Mail, because Wincanton's a small town, I know the post guy, he knows me, so I can book online. You can get your labels printed by Royal Mail, and they bring them. They'll collect the parcels, so that's a big one for me, because the post office is right down the other end. And he'll come with the labels, get them all on, and they're there, and they're tracked. I always use tracked postage methods because you can never tell, and you want some recourse if there's a problem. So it's the most cost-effective. I think for a small business, it gives the best peace of mind to service kind of balance, But for some reason, they had some weird thing where he came to collect the parcels in the week, and he didn't bring any of the labels. And it's just like, I'd ordered them all, and it's just like, no, they didn't come. So it's just like, well, I'll have to print the labels off then, And so we had to delay it, and then he came back and got all the stuff, and it's just a weird thing. And then he arrived yesterday. He was like, oh, I've got a parcel to collect. And I was like, I don't have a parcel for you. And he's like, well, I've got the label. It's like, oh yeah, I've got the label, but I haven't ordered the collection. So I don't know. Things you have to deal with as a business that you never really intended or wanted to get involved in. Anyone know we can get a mask set for the B17G? I would check out Hannant's. If Hannant's doesn't have one, there probably isn't one. But if Gary's having the same problem, that could mean that there isn't one. IPA. It's so IPA. I used to use IPA quite a bit. I've moved away from IPA now. I use ethanol, just alcohol. It has broadly the same sort of solubility properties as isopropanol. It's not as harsh, either on you in terms of the fumes. It smells nicer. And if you buy it from Europe, it's cheaper. Now, my girlfriend is Spanish or Catalan. She regularly goes back, so she always brings some back for me. So I have a built-in supplier. But I understand why people use IPA, especially in the UK. But they're pretty much interchangeable. Right. Okay, I think. Yeah, you see Boots do IPA. Ideally, you want more than 90%. You really need sort of 95 plus for... If you're going to be using it, certainly with like non-polar solvents like cellulose thinners, you don't really want any water in there if you can help it. Okay, I think I've got through all of the... one more. Still not got Outlaw paints on the website. No, I actually have a call with Jason booked on Outlaw at the moment before I go further into that. I'm still missing some, and I need to speak to Jason to work out what's going on. So no, it's not you, it is me, but there is a rationale behind it. If you contact me with what paints, I only stock the military range at the moment, and I don't have all of those because not all of them made them into the UK, and some have sold out. But I've got the majority of the range. So if you email me with what you want, I can tell you what I've got, and we can work that. Oh, do not use nail varnish remover. So nail varnish remover is acetone. Acetone is if you need to glue plastic together, acetone is the stuff to use, right? But this is how they glue acrylic together. Is you'll see people who make these big acrylic cases and things use acetone to do it. They'll use a syringe with a needle to put it in because it's so volatile it evaporates almost instantly. With Tamiya Extra Thin is 50% acetone and 50% butyl acetate, which basically is a similar kind of solvent but has a much lower volatility. So it basically gives greater contact time. And any cement, what you tend to do then is you add little bits of styrene. Sometimes you add other solvents like methyl ether ketone is one that's often added, which is also, that tends to be in hotter solvents. But you add increasing amounts of styrene. So if you look at normal Tamiya, like the clear white bottle top one, that has, I think, 2% styrene in, which is polystyrene, the same stuff that these things are made out of. All that does is it thickens the stuff, so you get greater contact time. So the more contact time there is, the more that solvent can penetrate and give you a deeper bond. Think of it like welding. I always think of it like welding. To me, you're extra thin. Acetone, butyl acetate is like spot welding. Hotter solvents, the same. And then the thicker you go, it's like giving you a deeper weld, which is why you get, if you try and pry two pieces apart that have been stuck together with, something like this tube glue, they've been stuck together for ages, you won't get them apart. They'll tear each other's, one will tear a piece off the other one, probably a big piece. So if you use that in an airbrush, and one, it'll volatilize really quickly. And when you blow it through, it atomizes, and that isn't good for you. So try not to use acetone by itself. It's also highly explosive when you do that. So not a great idea, especially if you've got a compressor. You don't want sparks with that. So try and avoid. Don't use petrol either. Gas is right out. Right. And always, if you're going to use these organic solvents, try to do it in as well ventilated position as possible. When I actually spray these things for myself, I say I've got a man cave. It's it's kind of a 1.5 garage, probably a 1-car garage in the US, maybe not even that. I sit literally next to the doors. And when I'm spraying organics, I have that door open. So I'm essentially sitting outside. So I wouldn't do that in an enclosed space. Right. I have waffled now for well over an hour. But going through again, thank you, because the engagement is fantastic. I love that. I'm also aware that I'm not really showing you anything while I'm doing this. So let me go back and show you. Well, now I feel a bit of a fraud because I said, we're going to talk about the short skipper. I've done nothing at all to the short skipper. So this is exactly how I left it. But for those of you who haven't seen it and didn't see the last one, here she is. So still the stubby, tubby little thing she was previously. I still haven't cut those pieces out of the wing. And the other wing, obviously this is now dry because before I just put the second coat on this to give us our very short, chubby wing. I think I mentioned the PC game that's available on Steam now called Flyout, where you can design planes and fly them. and all the physics and stuff is, you put the power plants in and all that kind of thing. All the physics is monitored. And I tried making this, and it did not fly. I couldn't get it off the ground. I put jets on it, and it still wouldn't get airborne. So I was roughing it up. I wasn't doing the exact dimensions, but it wasn't hopeful. But then the Sunderland managed to fly, and that was, yes, it had a larger wing, but it's also longer and presumably heavier. So we'll get there. We'll get the Skipper airborne one day. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you guys is I'll probably have to. Ooh, that didn't sound good. I'll probably have to change the camera position to truly show you this. But this is something I mentioned on one of the polls. In fact, let me change the video down now so you can see this. Get the lighting so you stand a decent chance of seeing it. Change the color temperature of this. Just do it as a light. So the other thing, Gary, if you're looking at YouTube videos of models, I think one of the things that a lot of people skip, much to their detriment in the end, is lighting. You need way more light than you think you do. So this is the Zvezda 1/72 scale Yak 130, and this I bought from a model show. I wouldn't support a Russian company at the moment directly, but this was bought from stock. Oh dear, so that light wasn't quite tightened enough. There we go. But this is both, I think, an interesting looking aircraft, which is why I bought it, because I do tend to like some the way that the Soviet era and current Russian aircraft are made. They make some interesting looking things. This almost reminds me of like a songbird, like a blue tit or something. Quite a chubby little body, but also quite small, quite elegant. But the reason I wanted to show you is the way that it's constructed is unlike any other model kit of an aircraft I think I've ever made. So to start with, I mean, it's really good in some respects. It's a nice little kit. They do a 48 scale kit of this as well, which if I can find it somewhere, I may pick up. But you build these air inlet assemblies, and also look how tiny the engines are. Just shows you how small they are. But you build these air inlet assemblies which have on the bottom of them, which you can see almost none of, all of the landing gear bays, which include all of the hydraulic pipes and stuff. It's really quite detailed. And again, you see none of it in the finished thing, which is why I've actually not painted it before doing this, because, well, actually it is painted, but you can't actually see it. So I didn't bother doing anything more on it. So you have that, and then you put the lower fuselage, which comes in different sections. So you have this, you put these pieces into it. This is two halves. So these are two halves of the fuselage and this bottom piece. So you sort of glue this into this side, glue this into this side, and then they come together, and then this piece goes on to join it all, which is a really strange way of doing it. Then you have this, which completes the air intakes. The front fuselage is these two pieces with the cockpit in, which cements into here, right? And then the wing assembly comes in on top of that to kind of keep it all in place. And I just thought, that's the weirdest way of making a model I think I've ever encountered. But it kind of works for this aircraft. You've got this very smooth, blended, these forward strakes and the wing, which are all blended together. And, it's quite a thin, narrow wing. The two, obviously, undersides come onto this, which made me then, think of that little, fat little songbird with fairly short wings for how wide its body is here. There's the pointy beak area. And then you've got two complete movable sort of flapper on tailor on sections thing. It's quite an attractive aircraft, and obviously I had the poll for what scheme to do it, and it's going to be a Vietnamese one. But I thought I'd show you guys that because I don't think I've ever encountered such an odd build to what you would have thought would have been a fairly standard kind of aircraft. I think any other manufacturer would have probably done, the two fuselage halves, including this piece, and then the wings coming in. But the chance of like messing up some of this blended area, I guess, would be pretty high then. And then you've got this big air brake on here, which is closed, I think, 99.9% of the time. So will be closed on mine as well. But I just thought that was quite a nice, interesting little aircraft and a really interesting way of building it. So that's that. And that was all of the kind of projects that I had to talk about. And then I was going to do masking on this beast, although I don't have a huge amount of time left. But you can see in a little bit more detail what I've done here, because before it was just a bit desaturated or oversaturated, I should say. The hardest part of this actually was doing the inside of, well, no. The mistake I made to start with was I was using the new Airbrush and I was getting blowback. And exactly like I said before, it was because I hadn't, I'd actually taken the Airbrush partially apart just to see how it worked and stuff before actually using it. And I hadn't tightened one of the pieces up, so it was blowing back. And I fixed that, and then stupidly, whilst holding this model in the Airbrush, I pressed down on the air and it just spattered a load of stuff. Fortunately, you can't see it anymore because I've gone over it all and hidden it, but it had this like big spatter spray like all up this side. But again, I always talk about there being no real dead ends in modeling, so I managed to hide all of that. I didn't even do that first, right? I did all of the panel lining before I went back and then just touched up, where some of those bits, and I knew I was going to go over it all anyway to create this kind of texture, for want of a better word. But you can see, I didn't try it especially hard. At the beginning, this was the wing I did first. I just wanted to try the Gallery. If you see how where's my, see how wide this is? So you can get pretty fine control, with the Gallery 0.3. Now I generally don't keep my panel lining as tight as this. So this is much tighter than I'd normally go. Normally I'm quite loosey-goosey with the panel lining because I want it to create texture. I want it to create some darkening of those lines, but not consistent. I don't want it to look too artificial. Is the word, I guess. And actually going over all of this, just, I literally just got the brush and was just, going over, wherever I wanted to create this. It was quite fun, and then just going back and then, just trying to concentrate again on some of the higher points to give some of the lighter areas to indicate that, bleaching of the effect when it comes out. I got to play a little bit doing some pieces here where nobody's actually going to see. again here, done the same sort of thing. I like to practice scribble camouflage on stuff like this because you don't really get much of a chance to practice it outside of actually doing it, or at least I don't generally. But yeah, again, not difficult, and the Tamiya kit certainly does, I think, a lot of the work for this. But let's have a look at masking. So the way I'm going to mask this, and people do this differently, right? Because some people will go and spray this spray this grey, sorry, as an eagle would be normally. And as I think the aggressors were originally, they were originally normal grey eagles that were then taken and they had the splinter applied over them. I don't think they changed the grey, the original grey. Not 100% on that, but I think looking at them, that's how they look. So they would go and do like a mist coat of grey over this, and then they would mask off that grey, and then they would do the splinters. Now, I'm not going to do that, and I don't generally like to do that, because if you do that, you lose all of this, right? Well, not all of it, but you lose the great majority of it. So then your grey, your mist coat of grey, has greater textural variation than the white and the blues that I'm going to do. So I make work for myself by masking out all of the different pieces, and then like I'll do, say, the white. So I'll do the white. So I'll mask everything apart from the white or the grey or whatever it is, and then I'll spray that colour, and then I'll mask up those areas, and then take off the ones for the other areas and do that, usually leaving a little area just so that I don't miss any, because that's the worst, right? And that way you get just one coat, just the mist coat of your chosen color over this, because this is my base, right? Now it's making work for yourself, right? And you think, well, how do you go about doing that? How do you choose that? And this is where this stuff comes in. So this is washi tape. So it is very thin paper tape, Japanese tape. And you can get different brands of this. This is just a generic brand. But the great thing about washi tape is it comes in different colors. So if I were just doing this with Tamiya, it would all be yellow, and I'd have to remember what is what. Whereas this way, I can mask particular colors in their chosen specialized color. So I don't have to remember then. So it takes out that mental work I'm doing. Basically, it stops me screwing it up, right, at a later date. So that is what I'm going to do with the masking, is I'll mask off all of the areas that are going to be, I'll probably use, I mean, you've got light blue and blue here. I think it's a 4-color scheme. I need now to find my color scheme, so bear with me a second when I just try and find that. F15C, aggressor, splinter. It's a 3-color scheme, I tell a lie. So it is grey, white, and blue. Oh, why is that not there? Oh, there we go. There it is. You just download this a minute. I can show you properly. Let's go side by side, and we'll present this. Okay. Can I not have it like that? No, I can't. Okay. Oh, that's not actually the screen I wanted to share. StreamYard is really, I'm going to use that pernickety word again, about how it displays these things. So we have this the splinter scheme. So we have the overall grey. So what I'll do is I'll mask off the blue and I'll mask off the white and obviously the natural metal for where the engines go. I'll spray the grey and then I'll mask over the grey with a third colour. We'll probably use green because that is nice and different. And then I can take off, the light blue for the white, do the white, take off the blue, put the white back on, and that'll be my colours. And then I can finally just unmask the natural metal and do that. It is a lot more work, obviously, but I think it's worth it for the end result, having more or greater base textural variation that you can then go and do your panel lining and all the other pieces on. Let me just go back on the chat because I've had 15 minutes without checking it. Oh dear. These aren't big chemical words. These are small chemical words. I can't do the big ones. I mean, it depends what you're trying to achieve, David. Napalm could be an option. If you want to remove any evidence of your modeling, that's always a good one. In terms of a good drill, so I've mentioned the wow stick before. I've also recently got something called bolts, BOLTZ, which I would say is better in terms of the engineering stuff. The first wow stick I had didn't work. I had to send it back and they're expensive, like £70. Bolts is a bit cheaper than that. I think it's maybe 45, something like that. Better quality engineering for sure. I wouldn't say it's more versatile, but it has more ability. It has more bits and stuff with it. So I'd recommend that over the wow stick now, even though I think the wow stick is a good, when the ones that work, if you get a good one, and if you don't get a good one, send it back, buy it through somewhere like Amazon if you buy a wow stick, so you get that option. There are Chinese copies of these things, of pen drills. I mean, it's horses for courses, right? You pay your money, you take your choice. You may get a good one, it may work fine. If it goes wrong, you just got to buy another one, right? Because they're not going to take returns, probably. But the good thing, and the reason I recommend those ones is they are completely sealed, like USB chargeable units, right? There's no cable. I can't be doing with cables when I'm, trying to drill and stuff in different positions. Just bits like this, on models are just far too easy to catch on stuff. Having cables around, you've got chemicals and bottles of paint and stuff. I'm too much of a klutz not to knock one of those over. So it's bad enough just having the drill, but yeah, even when you're just doing parts, like all this other stuff on my bench. So yeah. That is if you're talking about modeling drill. If you're talking about a normal drill, no idea. Okay. Having said that, pin vise is a good investment anyway, and having a battery operated, like a wireless type pen drill, is no substitute for having a pin vise, because there's the control you have with a pin vise, the how narrow you can go in terms of bits is better on a pin vise than you'll ever get on an electric drill, because it doesn't matter, even if you've got a, and the special thing, by the way, about the wow stick and things like bolts is they're low speed. You do not want high speed when you're dealing with small drill bits. You will break them. They're fragile. Again, that's why a pin vise, you'll always be able to go like more narrow, because you can control the very small amount of force that you need with those. And you really do need a small amount of force. You shouldn't be pushing them. The drill itself, the bit, should be doing the work, not you. Whereas with an any electric motor doesn't give you that feedback and can apply far too much force far too quickly, and you end up with a broken bit. I've broken plenty of bits to know that. Okay. Now, before I don't get any modeling done, let's actually try and put some masking tape on this. So I'm going to go with white as my first one. Now, the problem is with this is because it's so thin, I can't actually see where it starts. It's difficult. Okay. So if I show you this, maybe do it like that. Oh, there we go. You can see that better now. Maybe can I make that bigger? Does that translate to StreamYard? Yes, it does. Oh, look at this. I mean, if I carry on going like this, I'll be semi-professional in a couple of years. So I'm going to go to this, which is, I don't know if you can see my cursor on the screen, but it's the lower white piece down here. And this camouflage scheme is nice because it does give you the VFS numbers for each of these. You know, it's camouflage grey. It's basically a white. The names of colours and what they actually are, not necessarily the same. So this nicely kind of goes along this aileron. Though not as far as that. Nicely along there. I tend to trim with a craft knife, a hobby knife, when I'm masking. I just find it easy and gives you better control than trying to use a pair of scissors. So you see this washi tape is very thin. The other thing is I often use my hobby blade to actually place things because it's much thinner and easier to position than my fingers. I'm actually going to cheat here and go across at an angle, so this is easier to position, but it's not quite vertical. Like so, and then we're coming out to the light there. There we go. So we can tell what is white now on the aircraft. Now, let's do the other side. And they do make it quite easy for you, don't they? With where they've applied this on the aircraft. Thank you, US Air Force Aggressor Squadron, for being helpful to us modelers by masking your paint schemes in logical places. And that goes all the way across to about here somewhere. Yeah, that's not so easy to determine where it is. I think it's about, so we've got this area here, then we're along here, we're past there, past here. So I think we're about there at the wing root, across to there. like so, and then so once I've done something like this, that's not the exact position it's going to stay, but it's about the right length there. And I can come back and actually get it exactly where I want it at the end here. The other thing about this washi tape is it's quite easy to reposition. So I quite like it for that. This thing, I swear I'm going to break it off at some point. And this piece actually goes across onto the fuselage. So I'm going to put this piece on flush, like so. And I can cut this piece so I've got a nice edge. It goes parallel with the wing, comes in roughly halfway across that part of the fuselage, and then out to connect with this piece. So here I'm not worried too much about exact placement. I'm getting the right kind of lengths, and then I can come back reposition, get it exactly where I want it. And then decide what I'm going to do there. I'll probably just trim that across like so. There we go. And then this piece I cut off before can block that piece there. Same with this now. That edge I can just use that washi tape just to make sure that's clear there. Another white one done. So masking is one of those jobs that it's kind of, I like it and I hate it. I really enjoy, the best bit about masking, of course, is when you peel it off. If it's worked properly. If it hasn't, it's an absolute nightmare. But when you peel it off and you get these nice crisp edges and it looks exactly like you wanted it to, it's fantastic. It's just such a good feeling. It's such a satisfying thing, peeling off different bits of masking. Here we're actually coming in, I think, from that part of the wing root, coming across, kind of like that, I think. And it seems, so we're coming just past here, maybe about there. So go there, so I'd say about like that. Oops. So for the blue, so like for here, so you can kind of get an idea of how it's going to kind of evolve. Now, because I know I'm going to have to cut in here, generally what I'll do is I'll put it, I wouldn't generally use paper, obviously. I'd use my cutting mat or tile or something. But I'd use that cut-in. Looks like it's coming all the way kind of parallel to the wing and across like so. So that I cut in more than the angle of what's going to go across here. Yeah. And the same the other way. So here, this is going to come, what, it's going to be about here. Because I've got the blue coming from there, so the actual length is probably going to be about that. About there, like so. And then this piece I've used, I can connect the two, connect the lines as it were. Yeah, I'll use it the other way actually. But you kind of want to anchor it at one point. The reason I'm struggling here is I don't have my sexy gogs on and Maria is cooking Spanish omelette. So she's been frying onions and the the onion smell is coming up and making my eyes water. So I can't actually see what I'm doing. But you kind of get the idea, right? And then again, using the line of this washi tape, I can just score that and take that out. I do the same with this end here. But the idea really is for the edges, you don't want to be cutting here. You want to be using your tape, cut at an angle so that you can mask it cleanly. And so now when I spray this, I can spray over grey here. Once that's dry, I can mask up to all of these lines really easily. Take off this, spray the blue, put the tape back on, take this off, spray the white. I can take the whole masking off, and that's the camouflage done. Right? So that's the principle of it. And as you've seen, the actual application of what you do. And it doesn't really matter as long as you've got tape that will conform well, will give you a nice crisp edge and doesn't allow bleed through. Doesn't matter what tape you use. It's just this washi tape I find quite convenient because it is. And I haven't had bleed through with using outlaw paints on this. I don't know about aqueous ones, but obviously whatever tape you use, test it with what you're using. Let me go back to here just so you can see that in a bit more detail. See how I've done that? So that I can spray, unmask, spray, remask, unmask, spray, unmask everything. So, I mean, the natural metal will be slightly different because it's a one-time thing. It's not like areas where you have this paint. And apologies, Gary, I didn't see that until I was going because I was squinting through onion fug and trying to see what I was doing. But thank you very much for the donation. Let me just quickly go through the last comments as I realise we've been on 2 hours now. So yeah, Moss actually did a video on that. I'm not sure I would buy it. I'll just say that on it. Check his video out. You can make your own decision. But yeah. So the disk-based stuff I found is usually pretty good. I actually had a contact from the company that make all of the stuff for like Dispay, Godhand, and all of those, to actually see if I wanted my own branded stuff, which I'd love to do, but the minimum order quantities are pretty prohibitive. But that may happen at some point in the future. You never know. Just scrolling down. Modeling scheme. Yeah, okay, I get it. Next time, more modeling screen, less masking screen. It's because I went onto the way StreamYard works. I know you guys can't see this. Is you have to go onto a different screen, tell StreamYard you want to share that, and then if I'm actually on the StreamYard screen, I can only see a small part of the screen. So I have to swap over to the actual tab to see what I'm doing in any sort of resolution. So I can't actually see the StreamYard screen when I'm doing that. So apologies if I was on there a little bit too long. Very good. Very good. Okay, guys. Well, apologies, not as much masking as I intended to do tonight. I didn't actually intend to mask the whole thing tonight, but a lot of engagement, a lot of chat about other stuff, which I thank you guys for. I hope you found it at least entertaining, if not interesting. And please do, if you are available, join us for Airfix and Chill tomorrow. I have no idea what the subject will be. That'll be a subject that will come out from Moss at some point, usually around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, something like that. We usually get the topic. So you'll see that go up on the channel. But I hope you have a great night. I hope you had a great weekend. If you've not finished your weekend yet, I hope the remaining part of it is fantastic. And I look forward to you joining me on the next either Moss's stream or the next iteration of whether it be the Eagle or the Skipper or the Yak, or not quite sure which cars maybe. Think about what poll to put up. But otherwise, have a good one. Always great to get your feedback, guys. I see the comments. And thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.